Here's an introduction to Python. What is the purpose of using code in a general sense, such as in everyday life? It helps us understand how computers work and how tasks can be automated. It helps us think logically and solve problems in ways that make everyday life easier. Why should I understand code? For example, if you're playing the lottery, you could automate the process of checking numbers to see if you have a winning result. Python is a great introductory language. It's often regarded as a Swiss Army knife of programming because it's versatile, easy to read, and widely used. It's great for back-end development, which focuses on databases and processes that happen behind the scenes of apps and websites. In this presentation, we'll cover Python data types, libraries, and an example using Trinket.io with Tina the turtle. Some coding tips. Understanding the structure of code can help when learning other programming languages, as the logic is often transferable. Reviewing confusing parts. Try writing them out on paper and create variations until they make sense. Pseudocode is helpful. It's a way to plan code in plain language without worrying about syntax. The digital world is often a translation of the physical world. For example, apps and websites use elements like buttons that mimic real-world objects. This idea ties into user experience, or UX, and user interface, UI, design. Front-end versus back-end. The front end is what users see and interact with, such as buttons and text, while the back end handles what happens after an action is taken, such as processing data once you press the button. Some basics of Python. Variables. Variables store information like strings, such as text, or numbers. Think of a variable as a box that holds data. For example, a string is text like the words hello. Numbers can be integrated, such as whole numbers, or floats, numbers with decimals. Some of the common data types are text and strings, numbers, floats, integers, lists and arrays, and booleans. Lists hold multiple items like 1, 2, and 3 enclosed in brackets and can store various data types, and booleans represent true or false values. They are represented like this in Python, but they are similar to real lists in real life. In Trinket.io, we have an example showing today's lesson. The print function displays output. For example, print with parentheses hello world will print hello world, whatever was in those parentheses. You can assign data to variables and print them. For example, my name equals Jared. You can replace whatever words you want in the parentheses. And when you type print my name, it will print the word Jared. Some examples. You can print simple math operations like print 1 plus 1 or print 20 times 34, and it returns the result. You can use variables in calculations. In this example, a equals 1, k equals a times 2, and the last line is print k. Since a equals 1 in the first line, you substitute that into the second line, so k equals 1 times 2. 1 times 2 is 2. And when you print k, the value should be 2. In this example, we use Tina the turtle from Trinket.io. We use the turtle library. Then we can use turtle commands like making Tina the turtle write text. In this example, Tina moves forward, writes hello there, and then moves backward. Libraries are collections of pre-written code that you can use in your projects. For example, the turtle library lets you create graphics. To use it, you type in import turtle. There are other examples of libraries, such as Pygame, where you can use Python to write code to make video games. You can practice this with a partner by using pair programming, which is what they also do for learning code in industry. To recap, how do I code using pseudocode? You can talk it out with a partner and write it out on paper before you type it into the computer. In this example of Tina the turtle, Tina moves forward, turns by 90 degrees, and moves forward multiple times to make a square. Loops. For loops are a type of loop. For loops iterate over a sequence of items, like a list of numbers. In this example, Tina is going through a list of numbers. The for loop says for number in number list, which means it's creating a variable and going through each item in the list. For each item in the list, it will move forward by that item times 10, and then it rotates 60 degrees. The result is this spiral. While loops. While loops repeat as long as a condition is true. In this case, age equals 10. While age is less than 13, it prints age and then adds 1 to the age. As a result, going through the loop once, your output is 10, and then it adds 1 to it, so it becomes 11, and then adding 1 makes it 12. But when you go through the loop one more time, it becomes false. 13 is not less than 13, so therefore the loop stops. We'll try practicing a while loop. This says counter equals 0, while counter is less than 5, counter equals counter plus 1, and then you print counter. To do this loop, we have to make sure that the counter is less than 5. That's going to activate the loop. If it is not less than 5, the condition is not true and the loop doesn't activate. It essentially stops. Let's try this in Trinket.io. I take this code and paste it into Trinket.io. Counter equals 0, while counter is less than 5. Make sure that these indents are correct. That means that it's in the while loop. And make sure that your capitalizations are correct. This is a lowercase w, lowercase p for print. You can tell that things are correct when the colors show up and it recognizes that this is Python. Press play and it shows the results. So it goes through the loop once. You start off with 0. 0 is less than 5, so that is true. Then you add 1 to that 0 and you print it. 0 plus 1 is 1, so it shows up as 1 here. Then you go through the loop again. Is 1 less than 5? That's true. You add 1 and print it. Now it becomes 2. Then it becomes 3, 4, and then 5. You're now at the last number. 5 is less than 5. That is not true. Then it stops. Notice that this counter equals counter plus 1, that's up here. It'll be different if you put it after the print statement. Let's see what happens if I do it after. Press play. It's now 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's because you print it first and then add the number to it. There's a difference to that. Lastly, you can try this challenge where we have two variables happening at the same time in this loop. Let's try running that. It says, what is the value of A? Notice incorrect syntax because it was pseudocode. So I'm changing it so that it shows it properly in Python. I press print. The answer would be 24. The reason could be this, so we can show easily here print A and print K. And then we'll say print end of loop. So I'm going to press play. So you can see what happens here. Print A, so A is 6, K is 1. That's the first loop, like iteration of that loop. Then it becomes 12, and then 2, 24, and 3. And the last time that it ends 24 is the last number for A. How does this work? Well, K is your counter. So you can say, I just put comma here, and then the variable, so this is easier to read. When I press play, it'll show A equals 6, counter equals 1, and then counter equals 2, and then counter equals 3. So A is changing each time and then the counter keeps track of how many times you're going through the loop, and the counter is what stops it. That k is your counter. So there you have it. We're going through loops with two variables. One of the variables is the counter, and then the other is basically what happens in the loop, and you might need to find the final value after you're going through many iterations of the loop until it's no longer true. Then the loop stops. So I hope this introduction to Python covers your questions about loops, data types, variables, and you can see some real examples using Tina the Turtle, and you can make your own examples of variables and loops in Trinket.io.